Our lead story of the day is regarding the great cover-up that is taking place in our education system. Now, if you've been a longtime viewer or listener of the Bald Brad Show, you know that I'm an educator myself. I'm coming from a career of accountancy or accounting, specifically public accounting. And so I've gotten a good look over the past few years under the hood of what's really going on in our education system. And let me tell you, folks, it is nothing like what you think's going on. And it's nothing like you remember when you were in the classroom. So buckle up for this one. And don't forget to check out our second segment about Joe Biden visiting the border. Boy, oh boy, is that one a doozy as well. Support us here by hitting that like and subscribe button, sharing this link with your friends and family, leaving us a short, sweet comment down below. And folks, just double checking to make sure that YouTube did not go in to your profile and change your bell notification to personal without you knowing. So make sure that actually says all notifications. They do some shady stuff around here, folks. You know that they do. So just make sure that bad boy says all notifications, and you're going to be set up to be notified whenever we go live or upload a video. Your help and support would be greatly appreciated. Well, fabulous piece here by Luke Rosiak from the Daily Wire. It's an analysis piece, and we're going to break it down for you. It says the news that principals at several high schools in Fairfax County, Virginia, withheld valuable academic awards from top performing students around the time the school system hired a consultant that promised equal outcomes for every student. That should start raising alarm bells in your head when you hear things like that. That's leftist jargon for you all, without exception. Has shocked the nation. How could schools have gone from encouraging academic standouts to seemingly trying to squash them? And what are the consequences for our best and brightest in our nation? Oh boy, folks, I hope you're ready, because this guy ousted everything that I've been talking about for the last 2 years plus. This latest scandal effectively dispenses with a misconception that has confused the debate over politicized schools for 3 years. It's actually been longer than that. I would say going on for about a decade. The most important way you'll see critical race theory, also known as CRT, manifest in your school system isn't through discussions of race at all. It's through lowered academic standards and the rejection of the idea that excellence even exists. I've been talking about this every single year, at least since the inception of the Bald Brad Show. Prime example, right when I switched careers, I was doing my credentialing. I go in, I have to give one lesson because it's part of the credentialing program at a local school in Southern California. And I go to the actual teacher herself and I say, hey, you know what? This is what I'm going to give for homework. I'm going to give basically 25, 30 problems because that's what I got when I was a kid. That's what I was used to. I figured, hey, you know what? We'll do the same thing. It worked for me. It should work for them. And she's like, oh, no, we can't do that. And she goes, here, give this to them. This is high school students, by the way. We're not talking about middle school and elementary school. This is high school students, algebra, like seniors. And I go, okay, so, what is this? It was a piece of paper front and back. There was 5 problems in total, and they were titled Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And I go, do you want me to give this to them for a warm-up? Like, what is this? She goes, no, this is our homework. And I was like, oh, for tonight? She goes, no, for the entire week. So that's where we've gone in terms of academic standards. I'm not saying every school is like this. Some schools are literally doing away with homework altogether, like across the board. But we went somehow from our time, you and I, to doing, all the odd problems in the textbook or whatever it may be, to giving 5 problems a week to no problems in mathematics. The standards have gotten so low, it's ridiculous. And we've talked about how they're pushing in some school systems that 2 + 2 = 5. That is a real thing. That is not false. To create equity in the classroom so that nothing racial is happening or some sort of disparity or discrimination, that everybody's answer is of equal weight in mathematics now. Completely thrown out. So all those proofs, those thousands of years of algebra that have come through from the Middle East, squash, doesn't mean anything. You guys, this is the most cover-up story you've ever seen in your life. This is such a big deal. I was literally talking to somebody going to the Ducks game, one of my buddies, this weekend, and he was asking about grades. I was like, look, the C, if your son or daughter gets a C in the classroom, you guys, honestly, God, that's really a D-. That is not a C. You pretty much show up to school now, you'll get a C. You tie your shoes, you put on some lipstick, and you're good. I mean, it is unbelievable. Well, to continue here, leftist activists present CRT, or as its proponents in K through 12 call it, equity. You're going to hear equity, diversity, inclusion, galore. A lot of that's in college as well, but it's really seeped into the public school system. As being about teaching about slavery, as if American school system doesn't already do that. They already teach slavery. It's literally part of one of the standards that they have to teach, but that's what the leftists are going to present to you. Oh, well, you just don't want to, you don't want the true American story to be told to these kids. You don't want them to show the evils of slavery. Folks, I'm telling you right now, it is part of the standards of at least the Common Core standards that you have to teach slavery. So they're pushing a bunch of bogus stuff. They are teaching slavery in the classroom. Oh boy, are they. They're teaching it as much as they possibly can. The left want to show that America's evil. You think they're not going to teach about slavery? Come on. But I spent 2 years researching a book on these activists. takeover of American schools, and it quickly became clear that the real underlying story was much more important. If less politically flashy, schools' abject failure to actually help kids learn and the dishonest tactics they use to keep you from realizing it. And I've talked about this. If you've been a longtime viewer, oh boy, have I talked about it. One of the most striking charts I saw was from 2015. One of the axes it showed was the horrific state of academic accomplishment in the New York City schools. In most schools, the majority of students failed the state math exam, known as the regents. The other axis was based on the letter grade that students got in their math class. Here, the story looked much different. Almost everyone got passing grades, even though they failed the standardized exam in the same material. Meaning they took an exam in class, somehow everybody got passing grades, then they took the state exam with the same material, and they pretty much failed it. And there's a massive discrepancy between the data. And what I've said time and time again is they're passing these grades into the school system, and I'll tell you how they are doing this. I will tell you how they are doing it, because it happens even where I teach, folks. We'll get to that in one moment. There were essentially no correlations between getting a passing letter grade and passing the objective test. At the science school for exploration and discovery in the Bronx, check this out, folks, 94% passed their math classes in 2017 and 18, but only 2% passed their math exams. Interesting. And I would imagine it's talking about the at least the state exam for the Bronx or the state of New York. If they're getting 94% pass their math classes, but only 2% pass their math exams, then they're doing some weird adjustments in there and there's some shady stuff going on. Because usually your math exams are weighted more than your quizzes and your classwork. And there is theoretically a possibility that if you give extra credit and the extra credit's going in your exam category, that's going to boost grades, which I imagine that's what's taking place. But here's the other kicker. A lot of schools are moving towards test retakes and quiz retakes. And you might be going, well, what is that? I've never heard of that. Maybe you have if you have a son or daughter. So when we grew up, there was no retakes. There was nothing of the sort. Hell, if you got a review, you were lucky. Now they get guided notes. They get full reviews. Some schools will actually hand out the test itself. They'll just change the numbers as the review. And then when they go take the test, they already know what's on the test. There's no actual test, right? You're not being tested on anything. You're just seeing if you can memorize a bunch of material and how to do the problems, and you're good. Which is why a lot of students, yes, they can do what's called procedural fluency. They can solve the math problem. They have no clue what it means, you guys. Meaning, I'm talking about conceptual knowledge. There's factual, you have to roll that in conceptual, and then procedural fluency. Meaning, I'm going to give you a bunch of facts. You could probably solve the problem. You got to take those facts and the problem, correlate it together, interpret it, and then interpretation could change all the time per the problem. They can't do it, you guys. So we're passing these kids through a system, and they don't know anything. Some of them do. And I know it sounds bad, it sounds harsh. I shouldn't say they know anything. Don't take that literally. But they don't know the concepts in a way that they should be graduating high school. And this is an epidemic, and you're hearing it from a teacher myself. I've been screaming about this forever, but nobody wants to listen. This podcast right now is going to be for sure over 20 minutes. A lot of people aren't going to even bother. 30,000 close subscribers. Nobody cares about this. What people care about is that their son or daughter passes high school and gets into a good college, and we'll figure it out then. That's what it is. It's high school. High school is just being babysat at this point. You go in there, you teach them stuff. I'm not saying there aren't students that excel. I'm not saying that there aren't institutions that are built to really prepare your son or daughter for college. That's not what I'm saying. But by far, this public education system that we've created here and that the leftists have destroyed is terrible. Nobody gets held back. I know kids, you guys, and I hand to God, this is truth. If somebody's my friend that's watching this, they can vouch for this. I know kids that can't draw circles and triangles in a straight line. And I'm not kidding. And these are seniors, like 18 years old going into college. Somehow they made it in college. Somehow they made it to senior year. I'm not asking them, you guys, to draw a perfect circle. I'm not asking to draw a perfect acute triangle or an isosceles or whatever it may be, or even draw a perfect straight line. Just please draw a line. Not a clue. It's totally dumbfounded. And people think I'm kidding when I'm saying this stuff. I am not. There are seniors in high school that don't know how to multiply, even using a calculator, and they are seniors. Somehow they got passed through this system. Somehow they got to a higher level math, and they don't know how to multiply. They don't know how to convert percentages to decimals. The big thing that we're seeing, as far as the department that I work in and across the board throughout the United States, is students don't know fractions going into college. They don't know what a half is. They don't know what 3/4, 1/16. They don't know any of that. They don't know proportions. And you might be going, well, that's not a big deal. I don't know that either. but you shouldn't be able to move on to the next level if you don't know it, because that's a prerequisite to get to the next level. So we're passing people through without having those prerequisites. In other words, letter grades were meaningless, which is why the left is trying to do away with letter grades, by the way. Worse, they were arguably fraud or fraudulent. Educators were misleading parents. 90% of parents think their kids are at above or grade level. Isn't that what I just said? Yet according to the National Assessment of Educational Programs, or progress exam, only 11% of U.S. 12th graders are proficient in history and 22% in science. And even that number, you guys, by the way, is inflated. That's an inflated number. So you're talking probably, I would say give or take, let's be conservative, 6 to 7% of 12th graders are proficient in history. And I would say probably 10 to 12% are proficient in science. And it's probably lower for math. So you got to ask yourself, how is it that all these kids are getting C's and B's and A's? How is it it's happening? I'm telling you, I'm an educator. I know how it's happening. They're retaking tests to full credit, to 100%. That's not a test. It's not an assessment. You took the same thing over again. It's not like we give you a test, you fail it, and then the next one that we give you is completely different. It's the exact same test. And sometimes that failed test you get to take home. So you just memorize everything and you just go and take it. It's not an assessment. You don't know what the hell you're talking about, which is why they're passing the stuff in class. And then when they get to an actual test that they don't know what's on it necessarily, even though it's the same topics, they've never seen it before. They've never seen the questions verbatim. They can't solve it. So you're not creating actual critical thinkers. You're just creating a bunch of people that are robots that are memorizing your answers and questions and then just repeating that same process over again. You could literally do that to a monkey. You could do that to an animal and they would be okay. But this is what we've created, you guys. And it's do the teachers want to fight the parents? Do they want to fight the administration? Do they want to fight everybody else? Or is it, hey, you know what? Just give them a passing grade. You're out of my hair. You're not an issue with me. You know, and there's teachers that do that. Those inflated grades aren't a favor to little Johnny. They're the desperate lies a suspect tells to the detective when he knows he's about to be busted. For decades, educators pacified parents and taxpayers by lying to them in this manner. A teachers union front group called Fair Test demonized standard tests as high stakes. They claim that they stifled creativity by making teachers teach to the test. In reality, state exams often have no repercussions for students and are solely used as a metric to see where schools and their staff are performing. As for teaching to the test asks whether students know how to, for example, do math. So shouldn't teachers get around to teaching them how to do math at some point? Which amazes me, you guys. I always wondered this, right? Because a lot of times it gets put on the teacher. And again, I'm not coming from a career of teaching and education. I'm coming predominantly from a career of accounting in the corporate business world. I'm still only like 3 or 4 years into teaching. It's weird to me when people go, well, you're not teaching my son or daughter. My question for everybody as a parent, including my friends or whatever, what do you think goes on in the classroom? Do you think, and maybe, and I know there are some teachers that do this, but predominantly most teachers don't. Like, do you think we're just sitting behind our desk, like on YouTube or Instagram, just flipping through our stuff? Because I know for me, like I literally lecture like 40 to 50 minutes a day per class, like straight with my iPad going up there, drawing, answering questions. Like, so I'm confused if a student fails, somehow it gets put on me. But at no point is the real discussion of there's multiple parties that are a part of this. There's you, the student, there's you, the parents, there's you, the teacher, there's you, the admin, there's you, the locality that you live in that offers tutor services. Like there's all these things and mechanisms and variables that are incorporated within this, but somehow it always gets drawn to the teacher of like, you failed my kid. But it's like, you look in there, you didn't look at your student's grade all semester, meaning you, the parent, you didn't look at your kid's grade. You didn't ask for help. Your student might've been struggling, but the teacher actually was working with the student, but the student didn't want to put in the effort themselves of actually studying and knowing the material and putting in the, the correct amount of time, whatever it may be. And of course I'm generalizing here, but it's always, again, shouldn't teachers get around to teaching them? Like, is it just the person sitting behind the desk not doing anything all day? I find that hard to believe because I know in hell I ain't doing that. Well, during the Obama years, concealing actual academic performance through lowered standards meant that the president could tout an increase in high school graduate rates every year, even as SAT scores declined. And I've talked about this most recently, matter of fact, maybe like a month ago, how Los Angeles County, LAUSD, was boasting, they're like the second biggest school district in the United States, was boasting that they had an increase in graduation rates. And I told all of you, like, that doesn't mean anything. If you're looking at graduation rates, like anywhere from college to high school, it does not mean anything, you guys. As I've said, as long as you show up to class, most of the stuff in the classroom you actually do together as a class, meaning you're just probably copying something off the board, writing it down and turning it in. So you should at least get 20 to 30% automatically right then and there, plus all the extra credit that probably the teachers give, the test retakes. It is almost impossible, you guys, to fail a class nowadays. They're not holding anybody back. They just want to process you through the system. Oh, and they'll do it. I've seen kids go from 36% to somehow 75, 70% that C because they're a sports athlete and they want to get into a university or whatever. They don't have to be a sports athlete. Just the kids want to get processed through the system. I've seen it, you guys, through multiple years. Every year, actually, it happens. But, this is what we want to do. And Obama's going to lie about it. Trump's going to lie about it. Biden's going to lie about it. We're going to tell ourselves and lie about it, by the way, as Americans. And it's not going to, nothing's going to get solved here, by the way. Nothing's going to get solved. The system's already been created, folks. But a decade or two into the con, these excuses and smokescreens were wearing thin. Enter CRT, which is just a new wrapper on the same thing. CRT claims there's no such thing as objectivity. And nothing is more objective than standardized exams. And I agree about that, you guys. People go, well, I'm just a bad test taker. No, you're not. No, you're not. I used to say that same thing too when I was in high school. No, you're not. You just don't know it. You didn't take the time to study. And I'm talking to the time. Not like you're up in your room 3 hours a day studying and 2.5 of those hours are spent on TikTok and Instagram. And you spent 30 minutes writing your name and somehow you wrote a sentence down or you figured out one math problem. Or you're using photo math or you're doing some sort of thing that's not actually helping you study. You're just wasting your time. And then we're going to blame it on the teacher. We're going to blame it on the system. We're going to blame it on equity. We're going to blame it on somebody's race. We're going to blame it on the teacher. We're going to blame it on the admin. We're going to blame it on the parents. We're going to blame it on somebody else. But very rarely do I ever blame the kid. Very rarely it has to be everybody else's fault. And sometimes it is everybody else's fault. But here, we're going to just, do the smokescreen of CRT and the manipulation of data in terms of grades. That's implemented by a litany of policies, such as a move from letter grades, which I've spoken about, to what's called standard-based assessments, folks. Scored on a scale of 1 to 5, where everyone with an equivalent of 80% or higher gets the top possible mark. Meaning there's no differentiation between actually somebody that really excelled versus somebody that was just above average than to average. No, you're lowering the gap for somebody that excelled. You're basically removing them altogether. Or decrees that students who wouldn't turn in work will still get 50% instead of a 0. Yes, you heard that correctly. So you don't have to turn in any assignments anymore and you will still get 50% credit. Yep. People think this is like, some people are shocked when they hear this. For me, I'm like, yeah, no, this is normal. And when we went to school, this was not normal. You got 0. You turned that sucker in late, a minute late, it was 0, folks. You didn't get reviews. You didn't get told what was on the test all the time. That was rare. If anything, I've never, in my education, I've done all the way through my master's, I never saw a review. I was so dumbfounded when I became a teacher that we were required to give reviews and that we were required to give them retakes. I didn't understand. I couldn't comprehend because it's not an assessment anymore. It's not actually objective. You just memorize a bunch of material, as I keep repeating. The justification for CRT is not the horrific reality that many students can barely read or count. It's that there's a disparity, meaning that some can and some can't. That means you don't need to teach anyone to read to fix the problem. You just need to suppress the top performers, stop measuring with granularity, then declare victory. Meaning that you don't need to teach them. We're going to bring in the top down. You're going to squash it all so everybody's basically having equality and equity. There's not really much disparity and everybody gets to move forward together. So if you excel, it's no different than if you didn't excel and that you're all just going to get pushed forward. Which, why excel in the first place then? And then why put in the effort in the first place at all? So basically you're going to have a lowering of standards altogether because those that are excelling go, well, it's a waste of time. I'm not really getting any credit. Johnny over here that's not doing anything. The dude's drooling on his desk left and right, sleeping half the time, hasn't done anything at all. And we have the same exact grade. How is that possible? That's what the left wants to do. And at that point, you destroy your education system. And they've been doing it, folks, since Bush. Since No Child Left Behind, they've been doing it. You need to have consequences in the classroom. Not everybody's going to be of equal weight. Not everybody's going to put in the same amount of time as somebody else to study. Not everybody's going to have the same letter grade. Welcome to the world. Not everybody's going to have the same pay. Not everybody's going to have the same job. Not everybody's going to be of equal weight. Not everybody's going to be in the same social class. Welcome to reality, but somehow we want to remove reality altogether, inject certain mechanisms within our education system and society to bring everybody to the same level, and at that point, you destroy your social fabric. Welcome to Mao's China. Welcome to Stalin. Welcome to Hitler. Whatever it may be, at different levels of history, at different moments in time in history, you're going to have that same exact problem, and boy, oh boy, does it cripple, and it cripples quick. That works for teachers if their goal is not to solve the issue of kids not being able to read or count, but simply to avoid being taught. And again, I keep emphasizing this. You could teach a kid how to count, but it's what we call mathematical practice. You have to practice these skills at home. Just because I teach you something does not mean that you're going to learn it. And I always give this example to students. I say, look, you have to practice math. I've never played basketball. I'm not a football player. I played ice hockey my entire life. If I was to step on the court with one of my students playing basketball, they would teach me how to play. But if I don't go practice, then I'm going to continue to suck at it, no matter what the sport is other than hockey. In the same way, if they were to step on the ice with me and I was to teach them how to skate, I'm not going to expect them to learn how to skate if they don't actually go practice it. So it's the same way, a teacher can teach. Oh, and boy, do we, a lot. But if you're not going home and practicing and actually spending the time, but you want to spend time on sports and video games and doing other things, then you're not going to be good at it. And then when you get a test, you're going to fail. Welcome. That's what happens. But somehow we keep lying to ourselves that teachers aren't teaching, they're not doing their job, whatever it may be, which again, sometimes is the case. Just as in sometimes it's the case that a student doesn't do well for other reasons of not being, taken care of at home, being malnourished, or there's a lot of reasons. I'm generalizing here, but the generalization is usually why you generalize, is because that's usually the main thing. The award withheld by Fairfax County, the National Merit Scholarship condemnation, is given to those who placed in the top 3% of the nation. In a world where everyone is equal, even if they are not, the idea that there is a top 3% at all is intolerable to the left. Worse, the award is based on a classic objective test. The PSAT objective tests are the Achilles heel of the K-12 industry, and it's a leftist allies truth teller that threaten to expose the entire system. In the eyes of many educators, they can't be legitimized. Again, it keeps coming down to the educators, and I understand that aspect of because we're pushing kids through the system, but I'm going to keep harping this, you guys. There are bad teachers and there's really good teachers. You can have a really good teacher, and everybody can fail in your class, by the way. If they don't want to do the work, if they don't want to learn, if they don't want to do these things, you can literally have everybody get all C's. It really depends. You can offer all your resources. You can do everything you possibly can. You can create new activities. You can go all out, you guys, and you still could have people fail. Why? Because it's a two-way street. You could have a teacher that goes full blown, does everything they're supposed to do, best teacher in the world, and then you can have the other way, which is the teacher spectrum or the student spectrum that's supposed to be putting in the effort and is supposed to be doing what they're doing so they can get a good grade. Again, if I teach you how to play hockey and you don't want to show up to practice, you don't want to sit there and study the playbook, if you don't want to sit there and learn the mechanics and the systems that are in place for hockey, you're going to suck at it. And then as the coach, I taught you, you didn't show up. You didn't want to pay attention in practice. You didn't want to do the things necessary to be good at it. You didn't want to go online and watch a few hockey games from the NHL. You didn't want to go on YouTube and learn a few things about other instructors teaching mathematics. The whole idea that teachers aren't teaching nowadays, every kid has a phone. There's public libraries. There's libraries at the school. You're telling me that somebody can't go on YouTube, you guys, and watch another instructor teach the same exact thing that the teacher in class was teaching and learn from that? Oh, but they can't learn from screens. You guys, there's smart TVs at school. They watch a teacher teach them on the screen. It's bogus. It's a lie. Oh, well, they can't focus on a screen. They sit in class and they watch a screen in the classroom. It's the same exact thing. They watch YouTube all day. They watch TikTok all day, and we're saying, well, we can't learn. All the while, these kids watch League of Legends, they watch World of Warcraft, they watch Diablo, they watch Apex, they watch all these gamers, they watch sports, they can memorize statistics, they can memorize every player on a baseball, football team, the mechanics, who they were traded to, what team they played for back in 2002, but you're telling me they can't watch a lecture video that's 20 minutes long of a prior instructor teaching something? Come on. It's silly, you guys. Honestly, it's a lie across the board. The teachers are lying to themselves. The parents are lying to themselves. The students are lying to themselves. The admins are lying to themselves. The politicians are lying to themselves. Everybody's lying. And then I'm sitting here trying to go, everybody's a freaking liar. It's a bunch of bull crap. And we're just going to allow it to go through. That's what it is. I'm just being honest with everybody. If you don't like it, I'm sorry. But that's what it is. And that's why it's so long, because I'm so fed up with people just going with the flow. And then you call something out, then all of a sudden you're a bigot. All of a sudden you're ranting. All of a sudden you're pissed off, or whatever these other things. I don't have kids. So if this is the case, and if I did, I would be working with my kid every night. And I sure as hell would not put my kid in the public education system. I'd either homeschool that kid, or I'd be putting him in private school. And even with private school, I'd be making sure I'm home every night, making sure I'm helping them with their academics. And if I don't know the math, which I should know the math because I'm a math instructor, but if I don't know the English, if I don't know the history, read a lot of history, I'm going to learn it. That's my job as a parent. If I'm working 2 or 3 jobs, it is my parent to make sure I know that material so I can help the kid. They're my kid. It's not the teacher's kid. I know the left thinks so. I know the left thinks that they're the parents. They know what's best. No, we don't. No, we don't. I'm there to do the best of my job to help the kid. And sometimes even the best of my job isn't good enough. It's your job as the parent to help your kid do well in the education system. If you don't know the math, you got to learn it. Welcome to the world. Welcome to having kids. In the same way, if you don't know something to help raise your kid, you'd probably go learn it, right? Because you want your kid to be successful. You love your kid. Your teacher, the teacher probably loves the kid too. Everybody has the best interest out for the kid other than these freaking progressive leftists. That's what it comes down to. The issue with solving a problem by simply ceasing to measure it and then giving unearned gold stars is like merely kicking the can down the road, racking up a debt, and then eventually have to be paid by someone, whether it's future teachers, colleagues, employers, or government social services. It's the same way. Same exact thing. One of the schools that withheld awards from Thomas Jefferson School for Science and Technology in Fairfax, Virginia, a notoriously rigorous magnet school, following all the Democrat school boards' focus on equity and concerns that too many students who scored well enough to gain admission to the school were Asian. It was abolished its entrance exam in favor of merit, loyalty, and holistic admission criteria. Meaning that, there's too many Asians getting in here. We got to bring everything down because we want diversity across the board. And so if we bring down ultimately the score, then we're going to have more white people. We're going to have more Hispanics. We're going to have more blacks, whatever it may be. It don't matter. Everybody else has to be of equal weight to Asian people because their culture, their milieu that their parents created and their society created is out competing with whites, blacks, Hispanics, and all the others. So what do you have to do? You got to bring down everything else. You got to implement, what is it? I can't even think of it at this moment in time. Basically the admission to where affirmative action. You're bringing in affirmative action, and basically you have to score twice as well as a black person to get into school, right? That comes from Heather McDonald's book. I think it's called Delusions. You also have Thomas Sowell talk about it in his books, Discrimination Disparities. It turns out that all the mumbo jumbo simply means that math in school is letting in kids who are not as good as math. Now the school, which once boasted the highest math scores in the country, is forced to offer remedial math classes. What happens if the PSAT shows that holistic admissions is just code for lowering standards? Well, just hide the PSAT figures. So I'll give you an example. A school that I actually worked at for a bit. I asked the guy, the math department chair, has been there for 32 years. It's my first year actually like full-time teaching. And I said, hey, honestly, like what's going on with this intervention program? So if a student doesn't do well, they have to do remedial math or what's called also intervention in other schools. And so while say they're taking Algebra 2, they're also kind of repeating Algebra 1 because they didn't pass it. And by the way, if you're taking remedial, it's basically summer school. You're just doing a bunch of work and they just give you a passing grade. So it actually doesn't mean anything. You're not really learning much. So what happened was they went from having the first year they implemented intervention or remedial was like, I think he said something, we had like 15 kids. 5 years later, they couldn't even use a classroom anymore. They actually had to open up the gym so they can fit the amount of math students in there that were failing. So what happens is if you lower the standards, if you lower the requirements, then more people are going to take advantage of those lower standards and those requirements because they get passed through the system. So kids are more than willing to just do remedial math, not do anything all day in math class, and just take that class again the next year while taking Algebra 2 at the same time, killing two birds with one stone, and then figuring it out that way. And if odds are, again, the remedial math is just you having fun in class and just doing a bunch of assignments that you're photo mathing or you're just kind of blowing off. And then the Algebra 2, you're probably failing as well, but the teacher's going to probably just pass you through the system because you're a senior and they don't want to deal with the shenanigans, again, from the parents, from the admins and all these other things. They'll just push you through the system. They don't have to ever see you again. And that's what's happening. The bad news is that the real plague of CRT is much worse and much harder to deal with than just a few lessons plans from the 1619 project. The good news is that this creates a roadmap for a bipartisan or nonpartisan coalition of parents to demand reforms. When parents and taxpayers are typically vote Democrat, understand that leftist-seeming rhetoric is simply an industry selfish smokescreen, they won't be afraid to join the parents who are demanding a stop to it. The problem is parents aren't. Parents don't know anything about this. And also, why would you argue with a system necessarily that's passing your kid through the system when you might know that your kid's just not going to pass in the first place? You go, I'll take the C. I'll take the B. The B's great. My kid's not a B student, but he getting a B. So you're going to have this problem where parents want their kids to get into a good school, and so they don't mind this inflated grade. They don't mind if their kid doesn't know anything. We'll figure it out when we get there. So the same kids just a decade ago that might have been struggling in school, and this was still being applied, by the way, this hasn't really changed that much, are now parents having kids themselves. And so this is starting from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, and you're just seeing it being extrapolated and passed down. So the same kid that got in the remedial math that passed school just by tying his shoes had a kid, and he just expects the same thing. So they're not going to go out. No, nobody's going to do that. You gotta be kidding me. I would love, by the way, as an educator, I would love to make hard tests. I would love to do my job extremely well, which I think I do already, but I would love to make it harder and more rigorous so that kids are actually prepared and actually assess them in terms of that's going to really make sure that they know the material, not just memorize stuff, not just change questions and not just change numbers. Go back to the old days where if you don't pass it, sorry, you got an F. You got an F. And I'm not going to change it. You didn't want to do work the entire semester. I tried to do everything I could to help you. You didn't want to do it. You didn't want to study for the quizzes. You didn't want to study for the test. I'm going to fail you and you deserve the F. And you know that you deserve the F. So don't yell at me. Don't argue with me. You got the F. It's not like I'm changing grades and manipulating things. You got what you deserved. But we can't do that anymore because everybody whines and complains. It's all the teacher's fault. Oh, you didn't do this. You didn't do that. You didn't give me opportunities, all this other stuff. I didn't have that as a kid. Maybe you did. I didn't. Hand to God, I did not growing up have that. There was no like, oh, turn in late work. Or there's no like, oh, you can just retake a test. Like, come on. That's crazy. It's not school. It's just freaking daycare. The primary focus is simple. Show up to school, board meetings, and vocally shout down any and every initiative that doesn't directly relate to increasing test scores in writing, math, and science as measured by objective exams, and demand to see hard evidence that it will do so. What I think is interesting here is, do you notice they're having the parents show up to the board meetings to basically vocalize this whole thing? I understand vocalize the aspect of you're trying to remove that shell of that upper class of excellence down to the bottom and basically raise the bottom up by giving that 50% without turning in homework. I understand like raising awareness to that, but how about also as parents that we raise awareness of making sure going in the areas, going to the grade book that your student's doing well, communicating with the teacher. If the student's still struggling, the teacher's doing everything they can. There's a lot more initiatives that are going on or issues going on with your son or daughter that maybe meets the eye. They might be dyslexic, which isn't tested for in some schools. They might not be paying attention in class. They might be talking to their friends. They might not be studying in their room. And you think they're studying. Oh, I've been up there for 4 hours. I'm studying while they're on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram, Snapchat for majority of the time. And they're not focused on their academics. How about getting them down in the kitchen? Unfortunately, you're going to have to sit with them and babysit them. That's the parenting we got to do sometimes, and making sure they're actually doing the math and you're helping them with it. I know it sucks. I wouldn't want to do that either. Freaking work all day and come home and got a kid there that doesn't want to study or do what they need to do to get good grades. And then we're going to blame it on the school system for not teaching them, even though they didn't want to pay attention in class. They'd rather talk to their friends, be on their phone, listen to music, not do the math, not practice it during class time when they're supposed to practice it. You get what I'm saying here? I'm not trying to just blame it all on the kid. Some of it is the teacher's fault. But trust me, folks, this system is built for success. And if you're not successful in this system that's being built, boy, oh boys, there's some big problems going on. And it probably ain't the teacher and it probably ain't the school. Sometimes it is. Second, reject all rhetoric about disparities out of hand. The problem isn't that some students do better than others. It is the job of effective schools to have as many students as possible who perform better at the end of the year than they did at the beginning. This is easy to measure, but teachers' unions oppose it. That thwarts a temptation to reduce disparities by crippling high performances. If you were to create harsher standards, if you were to make things harder and not screw around, you don't screw around with discipline. If a kid's bad, you know what? Welcome to reality. You're going to get some consequences for being a bad kid. If you get bad grades, welcome to reality. You don't get to move on to this next level. You're going to turn 18 while all your friends are graduating. You don't get to graduate. You have to go to adult school or whatever it is. Or you know what? You get held back. You're 18 or 17 and you're with a bunch of 15-year-olds. Hey, then that's what it is. Welcome to the world. We can't treat everybody fairly. Some people want to work hard. Some people don't. That's reality. But for some reason, the left is never wants to deal with reality whatsoever. And then they pretend that their reality is the reality that we have to live in when everybody's looking around going, well, no, it's not. But again, that somehow we stepped into an alternate dimension, folks. I'm telling you, somebody stepped on the butterfly. I don't know when it happened, but for the love of God, it was within the last, decade or two. It ends here with saying, until schools earn back the trust they squandered over decades, we have no reason to think their obsession with fads like social emotional learning, SEL is what they call it, culturally responsive, sustaining education, and holistic assessments are anything but an excuse to hide their failures by moving away from performance measures we can actually rely on. 100% correct here, folks. There's a lot of ranting. It was a little long. It's about 35 minutes. But look, this is one of my biggest issues, and it needs to get out there. The sad thing is, like I said, most people don't want to listen to this. You yourself might have skipped through this episode. You might have not even listened to the whole thing because people don't want to hear this. They don't want to hear the truth. This is one of the biggest cover-ups, you guys, across the United States you've ever seen in your lifetime. One of the biggest. And well, it's not being addressed whatsoever. I want to make sure that I address it. And I'm going to take the time here. One, obviously it's my channel. I don't want to create things too long because I know you guys want shorter videos, but this is important. And I think it's really important to see what is going on because you're not having many educators coming out, especially on the conservative side. How many conservative teachers do you know that have a YouTube show that are sitting there going, I don't like CRT. This is what's going on in the classroom. I don't like gender identity being taught to your kids. I don't like all this stuff that you see lives a TikTok post. I'm not for all that stuff. I don't like that. I just want to teach math. I want the kids to do well. And boy, oh boy, am I going to do my damn good job of doing it. I'm going to cover my ass when I'm teaching it. But you know what? It's not always the teacher's fault. And I just want to sit there and just be honest of what I've seen, the things I've seen since I became a teacher, as somebody that's from basically third party, going back like, what's going on? This is nuts. This is crazy. bringing awareness to it, and I will continue to bring awareness to it. And hopefully we can get on other people's platforms, whether that's Dan Bongino, Fox News, whether that's, heck, I don't know, Ben Shapiro's Daily Wire, and get on their shows and talk about it. I've asked, by the way, if you know a named person, Dan Bongino, Tim Pool, if you know Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles, I've tried to get on their shows. As a teacher, I said, look, I'm willing to talk about anything education. I will run down everything that's going on. I will tell you what's happening here. This is what's happening. They're aware of it. Why would you not want to get a conservative educator in that room? Yeah, it would help build my channel. Obviously, I'm trying to utilize their platform to get more followers, but also at the same time, this is a big issue here. This is a mega issue. Nobody on the conservative aisle wants to bring awareness to it. I'm telling you they don't. If they did, they would answer those emails. They don't. If you want, get on their sites, go on their channels, and write, you need to get Bald Brad on your show. You need to get Bald Brad to get on education, and do it that way. Maybe somebody will hear the siren, but that's where we're at now. And by the way, that's been going on for 2 years, trying to get on other people's shows to talk about the education system. And again, you think you'd want a conservative teacher on there to tell you, this is what's really going on. I ain't going to sugarcoat it whatsoever. You might not like what I say, but it's the truth at the end of the day. So with that being said, hit that like and subscribe button. I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Bald Brad Show. If you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all our future content.